Hello and welcome to another episode of the Straight Talk about Small Business Success podcast. I've got a special guest with us. His name is James Brown. James, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today, Salim.
I am really looking forward to this. I'm going to quickly share your bio and we're going to get started. We're going to dive in.
Okay.
James is the CEO founder of Business Accelerator Institute and the Perseverance Squared with a background in law and business. He launched his first successful business in 1994 and later transitioned to coaching, where he has driven significant growth for over 350 business owners nationwide. He's also the co author of the best selling book, Shift Happens, and a recognized industry expert. James, you bring a lot of uh, knowledge to speaking to other business owners. You've created your own successful small business yourself, and so that's amazing. That must feel good to have had that level of success. I want to kind of dive in into, one of the things that you do really well is on the marketing side. You've built multiple businesses to seven figures and higher. What is what does it take to create a marketing machine? What's the blueprint for having such significant growth?
Yeah, great question. I think my number one rule when I work with businesses, and I've worked with over 400 small businesses to help them grow. And the very first rule I have is be different. Be
Mm,
different. Stand apart because years ago, I studied the human buying process. And one of the things I realized in that study is when we have a problem or we have an opportunity we're trying to take advantage of or a problem we're trying to solve, the brain searches for a solution. And when we go online now and we search for a solution, there's literally thousands of options available. And
mm,
when they all look the same, the brain gets confused. We go into analysis paralysis and then we do nothing. And so what does the brain do? Resorts to lowest price. And
mm,
so a lot of small business owners, when we're getting a lot of price shoppers, it's because our ads, our marketing messages look the same as everybody else. So my number one rule is be different. That ties into what is the purpose of marketing? The purpose of marketing is to enter the conversation going on in somebody's head. When we have a problem, that brain is trying to figure out a solution. So we're always thinking about it. It keeps us up at night. So when we understand what our prospects and what those things are that keeps them up at night, now you can craft marketing messages that enter that conversation, just as if
mm,
you're speaking directly to them. And that,
mm,
like for example, in a law firm, I have a criminal defense client, and somebody gets arrested, right? Well, getting arrested is not really what's going on in their head. It's the fact that I'm afraid I'll have to go to jail. I may lose
mm,
my job over this. Who's going to take care of my family? This is going to
mm,
be on my record for the rest of my life, right?
mm,
So why not run ads that say, have you been arrested and you're about to lose your job?
mhm,
Are you worried about who'll take care of your family? You
mm,
may be feeling like you don't have any options, but you have a ton of options and you owe it to yourself to find out what they are, right? So when you can run an ad
mm,
like that that speaks
mhm,
directly and people are like, all I want them to do is raise their hand and ask for more info.
mhm.
And when I
Right.
tested this out in my business, I was making 3 to 4 sales a week. And for my geographic area, that was a small number. But when I started running these types of messages, the very first week I ran them,
Mhm,
we had 68 sales in a week. The next week
mm.
was 72. The next week was 63. And I knew from that point forward, that's the way we needed to enter that conversation going on in somebody's head.
Mm, that's amazing. Yeah, yeah. Um, so messaging is so important. And really to create the message, we got to get into the head, inside the mind of our prospect. What are their problems? What are they thinking about? What is keeping them up at night?
Yes. And one easy way to do that was when I sat down in front of a new prospect for the sales conversation, I asked them, "What brought you in today?" Simple
Mm,
question. Spend the first 5 to 8 minutes asking what brought you in today. Now, you'll probably have to dig a little bit.
mm,
Like
mm,
I did bankruptcy law when I first started my business. And so if I ask somebody what brought you in today, they might say, "I got a foreclosure notice." Okay, well, the foreclosure notice is just a legal end to it. So I'll say, "What does that mean to you?" "Well, I'm going to lose my house." "Okay. And if you lose your house, how will that
mm,
affect you?" Now they
mm,
start to open up with what they're really worried about.
mm,
We won't have a roof over my head, and I don't have any family here. I don't know who I'd
mm,
live with. We may have to live in our car, and that would be really unsafe for my family.
mm,
If I
mm,
have to move, I'd have to get my kids out of their school and leave their friends. Right. So
mm,
all of a sudden, they start
mm,
telling you what's, and so I just jot it down
mm,
and I
mm,
pass that back to my marketing team so we can create
mm,
headlines and
mm,
messages around that.
mm. Right, 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 right. So you really uncover the underlying problems that the prospect is faced with. And earlier on you said be different, right? And so if you left that conversation to you're looking for a bankruptcy lawyer and this is the price to do
Mm-hmm.
a to help you through this bankruptcy, and so it's $5,000, it becomes a commodity. It's like just helping them with that bankruptcy. But when you really uncover the underlying problems, then you are being different. You are able to help them and create a solution that makes you different and stand out from the other folks in that industry, your competitors.
That's exactly right. And the sale of anything is just an exchange of value, right? No
Mm,
matter what we're in the market for, if the thing that I'm looking to buy has enough value to me, I'm going to give my money for it. If it doesn't have enough value, I won't give my money. So
mm,
by
mm,
always looking at our value proposition and increasing the value to the prospect, you can get them to come to your sales conversation where they've already made the decision. I'd have to be stupid to do business with anybody else. And it
mm,
doesn't matter what you charge. And we start that by having a marketing message that stands out over everybody else. That brings
mm,
value in and of itself because it gets rid of the noise,
mm. Right. I
right?
love
And
that.
so we're always thinking in terms of how can we bring more value to them before they even sit down with us,
Yeah, and that's
and
what
so
marketing is. That's
correct.
the marketing does that heavy lifting and gets
Yes.
the person that's sitting in front of us, whether it's a Zoom call, a video call, or in person, that they have subliminally almost made a decision that, yeah, I want to work with these folks. They've got some good stuff
Yes.
to share. Mm,
Marketing's job is to bring the right person in the right frame of mind at the right time with the right problem to our doorstep. That's
yeah,
it. And if it
right.
does that, then it's our intake staff and our sales team that brings them over the finish line.
Yeah, yeah. I want to shift gears, James, a little bit. I was talking to a group of small business owners. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was doing a session and I shared with them a concept that's really worked well for me. And that concept is my business is different. And when I started my accounting firm 27 years ago, I thought my firm was different. And what that did to me, to my detriment, is I blocked off a lot of amazing ideas that I was reading in books, talking to people about. And I was like, yeah, no, that won't work for me. I own a CPA firm. The client's relationship, you will never know. This is like I have a very sacred type of a relationship. And my team is unique and different. So thank you for your advice, but it won't work for me. And by doing that, I blocked off a lot of good stuff. Earlier on, when you and I were talking, and you said, the essential parts of a business are very similar all across. Talk to us a little bit about what those are. What are those essential parts of every thriving business?
Absolutely. And I like to think of it as a 7-story building,
Mm,
right? And so you go into the first floor of this building, you've never been in this building before. and you're trying to find clues and stuff for how do you go to the next level, next level. So the 7 parts of the business are marketing, sales, your factory for producing whatever it is you sell, the people that run the factory. Then you've got the physical plant, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar. Then you've got your money and metrics. And then the last part is you as the owner. Because without you and the right
Mm,
mindset and the right growth, that business doesn't exist. So the
mm,
only thing that's different across businesses is what is sold. The
mm-hmm,
rest of the parts are the same. So it's like going into this building and you're learning and you're mastering things on that first level and you're gathering clues, and finally you get this thing that says go in this little room. It looks like an elevator.
mm,
And so you jump in the elevator and you've never been on an elevator before. And then all of a sudden the doors start to close and you jump off because you freak out, right? That's called a terror barrier.
mm,
And you're afraid to go to the next level. And so when you master everything on the first level, you got to have faith and go in that elevator and go to the next level. And that's how you master all parts of the business. Now, one of the things you mentioned a minute ago was my business is different. That's not going to work. Unfortunately, I hear that a lot. And where that comes from is limiting beliefs,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Either you had a past experience or you heard of another person having a past experience, and we develop a limiting belief that my business is different. That's not going to work.
Mm,
And what I did just the opposite. I
mm,
look at other businesses and I'm like, how can I take that and make it work in
right.
my business?
Right. Right. Yeah.
There's even outside my industry. There was
Right.
things I learned from Southwest Airlines, because in
Yeah.
the airline
Same
industry they're
here.
pretty unique in how they market, and so I took
Herb
some things
Kelleher.
from
I
them.
remember his book Nuts, and I took so
Yes,
many gems from just reading that book 20 years ago and putting it in my
yes,
accounting firm. I mean, what would you think an airline industry and an accounting firm have in common? A
yeah.
lot.
Just as a quick example, I was flying on Southwest, and in their magazine, it had a hidden airline fees word search puzzle. The
Hmm.
baggage fees, extra bag, all this stuff, and so I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of bankruptcy lawyers that charge hidden fees. And so
Hmm.
I tore that out of that magazine. And the next day I had a hidden bankruptcy fees word search puzzle that we put in our drip campaign to get
Hmm.
them thinking differently about
Hmm. Yeah.
price.
Right. 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 And I mean, it's really a mindset thing, isn't it? It's really the team, the leadership team in an organization, how they're approaching their business. Are they approaching it with this limiting belief that my business is unique, or are they just going to open up the whole thing and say, all right, what am I learning here? What am I observing here that can, what do I need to do? I don't have to bring that same idea in its same exact format, but what changes can I do and make this new idea that I wasn't aware of, make it work in my business? I think it opens
Yes.
up. And this is, in my belief, this is, I feel, how innovation takes place. This is how a very regular brick and mortar type of an organization changes how they show up in the marketplace.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like I've got sometimes my staff, I'll give them something to do and they're like, I've never done this before. I'm afraid to do it. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, guess what? I don't either. Let's just figure it out.
Mm,
Right. And, what we try to do is when we make decisions that are not in our wheelhouse or that are different, we think it may not work in our businesses. We try to tilt the odds in our favor as much as we can so that we don't throw a bunch of money at something just to see what sticks. Right. We tilt the odds in our favor. We reduce our risk. We test it. And
mm,
then if it works the way we think it should, after adjusting it and testing it again, we roll out a bigger budget. That
yeah,
goes with marketing, that goes with
yeah.
hiring
Mm,
people, all
mm.
kinds of things that can apply to.
Yeah, yeah. Great segue to our another kind of shifting gears. And my question, James, is like, what have been a few things that you've learned in the last 30 years, consulted with almost, more than 400 businesses, like two or three things that you feel make a small business successful, or these were like wow moments for you? These are really important things that you want to share with with our audience.
I think one of the first ones is breaking through those terror barriers, right?
Mm,
I used to have this even after practicing law for 20 years. Whenever I would go to court, I would almost want to go in and throw up, right?
mm,
And I got to thinking, like, why was I afraid to go in there? And I was afraid of, oh, my colleagues are going to think I'm going to say something stupid, right? But then when I stepped back and I looked at it, I was like, when's the last time I've even lost an argument? And I couldn't even
mm,
remember. So
mm,
when
mm,
you feel that terror over
mm,
trying something new, take a step back and ask yourself, is this fear based in reality, or is it an illusion? And
mm,
like in that example I just gave,
mm,
it was an illusion. So as soon, and most times that's what it is, it's an illusion. So that allows you then to just hurdle over it and push through it, and that's how you go to the next level. That's one thing. The other thing I think was key is managing your business by data and not emotion. We
mm,
make emotional gut feeling decisions. I've seen too many business owners where their staff will
mm,
say, I'm just overwhelmed, I'm overworked, and I don't know what I'm
mm.
going to do or how we're going to keep up with this. So the first thing they do is go hire another person.
Right, right.
And you got to look at the data. A good
Mm,
example of this was I had an attorney that told me he was overworked, couldn't figure out what to do. And I said, what's keeping you from getting your work done? He said, I'm on the phone constantly, constantly.
mm, mm,
Emotional me went into my office manager and said, let's hire another associate. And she looked
mm,
at me, God bless her, and said, why? And I said,
mm,
because he's overworked. He's always on the
mm,
phone. She said,
mm,
did you look at the phone records?
mm.
And I just sat there silent. I said, no. And she goes,
Right.
don't you think you should have? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes. So I looked at
Yeah.
the phone records, and the
Mm,
day before, he was on the phone, incoming and outgoing, for under 5 minutes.
mm,
And the next day, it was under 4 minutes.
right.
And I was almost going to
Right.
hire another
Yeah.
$80,000 employee because
Right.
he was telling me he was overworked. But
Right.
when I looked at the data, that
Right.
wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
so we solved it a different way. Right. So always get to the point where you're managing your business on data. And
Mm,
that keeps you out of some expensive mistakes.
mm. Love that. Yeah. One more, James. I'm
Okay.
liking this. Give us one more gem.
Um, I think one more gem. I never realized, we think about our dads, our fathers, and they give us advice over the years. And one of the things he told me when I was first learning how to drive and I got my first cars, he said, don't let anyone else drive your car. And I'm like, why would I let somebody drive my car? And he said, don't let the backseat drivers
Mm,
influence you with what you're doing. Don't let them say, hurry,
mm,
race that guy, go through
mhm,
the light. You drive your car. And
mm,
as I started growing businesses and I started getting little bits of, you should do this and you should do that, and oh, you're
mm,
making a mistake and you can't,
mm,
don't let people drive your car. It's
mm,
your business.
mm,
Yes, you want to hear from advisors. Yes, it's good to work
mm,
with people who've been there and done that, but
mm,
don't let other people drive your car. For example,
mm,
um, I have a client that wants to have a call with me on Saturday. I don't do Saturday calls, period.
mm, mm.
I'm not going to let them drive my car.
Right.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
that was one of the things that when you feel like you have to give
Mm,
in to everything the customer wants, you're starting to let them drive your car.
right. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Interestingly enough, James, my dad was an entrepreneur. He passed away a few years back, but one of the pieces of advice he gave me as a new entrepreneur was, Salim, seek advice, but at the end of the day, you've got to make your decision. The decision has to come from you. And it's interesting you're saying that in different words, but with the same essence.
Yes. And to build on what you just said, that's super important because if you don't, as a leader, you're not going to have any credibility with your team if you're letting other
Mm,
people always make your decisions for you.
right. Yeah. Wow. James, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed our
Good.
conversation. Um, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you? Are you available for folks to get in touch with you? Give us a little bit about that. Share that.
Absolutely. Our website is businessaccelerator.institute. I know it's a little different, but it's a .institute. And we actually are creating a separate landing page just for your listeners. So I will send that link over to you. You can put it at the bottom, and they
That's
can go
awesome.
right to the landing page to be able to find out more, make it super simple for them.
Great, folks. Business Accelerator dot Institute. We'll have that in the show notes. James, I really enjoyed our conversation. You were very generous. Appreciate it was fast paced, but we got a lot from it. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for having me.
You take care.